Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. Today's video is on evading close range radar guided missiles. This video has been about 2 years in the making, but we're finally getting around to making it with plenty of experience now, so we've got no excuses. So when you're asking a question like this, it's a very broad subject. There are lots of data points, lots of variables, and so to give an answer is almost impossible. So, I mean, you could go and watch a guy and he could show you how to dodge a particular type of missile, but that would only be that particular missile in that particular aspect of hostile and that particular type of hostile that's firing it and that version of the missile and at that altitude and at that speed. So we need to be a bit more broad-minded and scientific thinking about this, more encompassing, to give what I would call a proper answer. Now, we're never going to give a full correct answer that is correct in all of them circumstances, but we're going to get as close as we can in one video. So, first of all, as ever, we need to pick apart the title of the video to understand what the hell we're talking about. Evading, okay, so that means what? Not being hit by, dodging. Close range is the next. So what is close range? Is 1 mile close range? Is 0 miles close range? Is 20 miles close range? Close range is being defined here as a symbol, and I'm just looking for that symbol now if I can see it. There it is. RLET. RLET stands for range lethal or range no escape. It's a generally accepted term with all fighter aircraft, and it means the range at which you can fire a certain missile and it be not possible for the guy you are firing at to escape. All or most fighter aircraft will have ranging information to show you where R lethal or R no escape is. So, bearing in mind we accept that you cannot dodge or evade a missile that is being fired at you at R lethal or R no escape, we're going to show you that, of course, actually you can, just with the correct technique. So, to define close range, we are looking at a missile that's being fired at us at R lethal or close to R lethal. Next, radar guided missiles. So we are looking at a missile that is either a Fox 1 variant, so that is a semi-active radar homing missile. This is a missile without its own onboard radar antenna. Instead, it uses the mothership's radar from firing all the way until impact. And Fox 3, a missile that at some point during its travel will go fully active. It will have its own onboard radar and it will use that radar to seek the target rather than the mothership's radar. So these are two different types of missile, but when we're dealing with close shots like this, close range shots, we'll see that these missiles nearly work the same, and we can treat them as pretty much the same. The technique will only really vary between dodging these and these when we're at longer ranges than are lethal. So within the Fox 1s, we've got, these are just main ones, the ones that you're most likely to see that I'm picking out. For the Fox 1s from the USA or NATO, we've got an AIM-7 Sparrow, and we'll be generalizing over the MH variant. Then we've got the R27R and ER series. We're mainly looking at the ER in this case. This is a Fox 1, Russian Fox 1 smoked missile, and the French Super 530. And for the Fox 3s, we've got the AIM-120, and we'll be concentrating on the C variant, and the R-77 Fox 3, the Russian missile, and the AIM-54 Phoenix, and that is the Mark 47 variant, I believe. Note that associated to each of these missiles is an RLET modifier, because we're going to get a little bit complicated in a minute. So these are in miles, and what we'll probably do is come back to these. So next, let's come back to the title. Now, we've talked about the range, we've talked about the type of missiles, we'll talk about what we're doing with these missiles. What we haven't talked about is speed, and speed is important. Now, if we come back to our RLET here, RLET is completely variable. It depends on lots of variables, like how fast you are moving, how fast the target is moving, the aspect between the two. It is the altitude of him, the altitude of you. It's the speed of him, the speed of you, and plus a whole other bunch of stuff. So for a particular type of missile, there is never a single static RLET. It constantly changes depending on our scenario. So to simplify this video a little bit and to make it actually possible to do, what we're going to have to do is change one of the variables, VOPT, into a constant. So VOPT is velocity optimal. It is the velocity that our aircraft is going to be flying at and the opposing aircraft is going to be flying at. And to keep things simple, we're going to assume that both aircraft in all tests are flying at Mach 1 relevant to that current altitude. So Mach 1 sounds very rounded up and it sounds like we've just pulled it out of thin air, but it's actually a good standard to use. Now if we imagine in a real missile fight, both aircraft are going to be loaded up with missiles, they're going to be loaded up with fuel, and a good average speed to think of them at various heights is altitude relative Mach 1. If they've got full burners on, then they will do a little bit past Mach 1, maybe Mach 1.1, and if they're at mil power, less, maybe Mach 0.9, but a good average we're going to say is Mach 1. So everything that's going to happen today is at Mach 1 at altitude. So with the speed hard-coded in as a constant, we now need to look at the altitude. Again, to simplify, we're always going to assume that the aircraft, the aggressor and the defender, are at co-altitude. Now that's not as realistic as choosing Mach 1, because realistically you could have a target down, you could have one of the aircraft down at sea level and one of the aircraft could be at Angels 20, and that Angels 20 could be firing at this guy, or this guy could be firing up at the Angels 20 guy. Well, that's not a massive problem, because you can actually interpolate pretty easily from the results that we've got here today, which are based on co-altitude. You can interpolate them to an example where each aircraft is at different altitudes. So for instance, if we do an example where both aircraft are at Angels 15 and it gives a result of X, for instance, then in a bit of a simplification, but in a real fight, if one aircraft was down at Angels 0 on the deck and one aircraft was at Angels 30, then the average between Angels 30 and 0 is 15. Therefore, you could say that the result between the 0 and the Angels 30 fight will also be X, and you can interpolate that up that whole span of numbers. So that's just something to bear in mind. So the next thing we need to calculate is RLET, the range lethal, and we're going to calculate splitting RLET up into three aspects. Aspect 1 here is hot aspect, that means that the two aircraft are heading towards each other. The second one here is side aspect, that means the aggressor is shooting the defender from the side. And the cold aspect, this means that the defender is being chased by the aggressor. So we're going to look at calculating RLET here with a hot aspect, and the reality is we don't have to calculate anything. We can have, if it's a hot aspect, we can have DCS calculate this for us. Now for our aggressor, we are always going to be using an F-15C with AIM 120C. The reason for the F-15C is we consider it a good jack of all trades. It does everything pretty well, nothing specially, but everything pretty well. The reason we're using the AIM 120C is because we consider it the worst case scenario. It seems from our testings to be, in terms of being shot at, the hardest thing to dodge because of its mixture of maneuverability, radar tracking, and its range, its burn length and its speed. So it's what we would consider the hardest one to beat in close range at R lethal. So we've plotted a graph here. On this axis we've got R lethal in nautical miles. Here we've got the co-altitude of the aircraft in feet ASL, and we've populated the graph with 3 data points. On the deck we've got 4.7 miles here at 15,000 feet co-altitude. We've got 7 miles here, and at 25,000 feet co-altitude we've got 10 miles here. These data points were not calculated by us, they were calculated by DCS. If you use the F-15, you'll know what I mean. It gives you R lethal on its ranging bar, so it's all done for us in this case. And all we do is drive a pretty line between them, and we can interpolate that, assuming that the aircraft are co-altitude. And of course, V optimal. Remember, everything in this is assuming everyone is at V optimal. Okay, so if you're wondering what these particularly highlighted points are at 25 and 0, the purple circles show these are the data points that we're going to be doing in testing later, actually flying the aircraft. So we did the tests at Angels 0 on the deck and co-altitude Angels 25. We didn't bother doing the techniques for Angels 15 because we're pretty sure it's the same or very similar to Angels 25. Needless to say, the techniques for dodging these missiles will differ between Angels 25 and 0 though, because obviously we've got altitude to play with here and no altitude to play with here, but we're going to go through that later in the video. So next, let's look at the graph for side aspects. So again, R lethal here in nautical miles, and we've got our common ASL here. What we found is that 4.1 miles on the deck with the side aspect was R lethal, and at Angels 25 it was, if I look in my results, 8 miles or 8.05 miles, I think it was. For this data, we cannot get from the aircraft and DCS. It does not give us that data, so we had to do this by trial and error, spending about 5 hours shooting each other, and we finally came up with the figures. Next, same thing for cold aspect, and we found it was 0 on the deck, co-altitude. It was 3.5 nautical miles, and Angels 25, it was 6.95, was near as damn it 7 miles here. Now, assuming a common VOPS and assuming a common altitude, we can now calculate VLET for any aspect and any altitude. If we say I want a hot aspect of Angels 20, then we can just go up there, draw that line across there, and you'll get whatever that says, 8.5 miles. Okay, so we've got everything possible covered basically. So that is where the RLET modifier comes in, okay? And this is just taken from our experience. We've got about 3 years experience with lots and lots of guys. These missiles have changed over the years, but this is what we've got them in our databanks at the moment. All of this only allows you to calculate assuming that an AIM-120C is being fired. But we want to know for all the different missiles. So here are all the different missiles. If it was an AIM-7, I forget if it's an Mike variant or a Mike H. I think it's a Mike H variant. Then it has less lethal range, presumably because of aerodynamic reasons. I don't really know. That's getting a bit beyond me at that point. But what we say is that we have an RLET modifier from and to. And what that means is that is the number that we modify the AIM-120C graph at the deck there up to Angels 25, which is as far as high as we consider you will ever be firing at our lethal. -2. So let's just look at that a bit closer. So for the AIM-120C on the deck with a hot aspect with VOP, we consider it, 4.7 miles. 4.7 miles there. Look at my data. So in that case, the AIM-7, you would minus 1 mile off it, and it would be 3.7 miles. Up here at Angels 25 co-altitude, VOP, all the usual same variables. Then it is going to be not 10 miles RLET, it's going to be -2 miles, so that it becomes 8 miles with an AIM-7. And again, that's presumably due to the engines on the particular missiles and the aerodynamics and whatnot. This one here, I think these results here are for the ER, not the R. And the AIM-54 has to be taken with a bit of pinch of salt. You know, we've only had this missile available for 3 weeks now, so we've only fired it so many times. We need to fire it several hundred more times before we really know that. But we get a good feeling that it's roughly about the same distance as the AIM-120C when it comes to R lethal. Remember, R lethal has nothing to do with the actual range of the missile. It's a mixture of the missile's speed and the aerodynamics and tracking sensing ability. Okay, so that's that covered. There's quite a lot of data to absorb there, but you can get on with that. The next thing, I haven't written it down, but it's obviously if you're the defender, then how do you know when you're being shot at? It's really easy because any of the aircraft that this is relevant to, fighter, you're going to have an RWR, and that RWR is going to tell you, it's going to give you a big beep when a missile is being shot at you. If it's a Fox 1 being shot at you, it will start beeping at you as soon as the hostile has fired the missile, because that's just how this works. They will have to have an STT track or something similar. A Fox 3, if it's within 8 miles, I believe the general rule is, then you will get a warning, audible warning straight away as soon as the missile comes off the rails. If it's above 8 miles, then that is before the missile will be programmed to go pitbull, and therefore you won't actually get the warning until 8 miles. So that's just something to bear in mind, but it's still perfectly dodgeable. Bearing in mind those parameters. Now that 8 miles may vary slightly. That is for the AIM-120C. We're pretty sure it's the same for the AIM-54. The R-77 may be slightly less, but as far as I remember, it's pretty much near 8 miles. Okay, so that's how we're going to be determining when one of these things has been shot at us. As for knowing where the enemy is, you're either going to have a visual on the guy, or you can use your RWR, and it's going to give you the azimuth of the missile fired or the guy who's shooting at you. Okay, we're powered through that data. Now we need to actually look at the methods that we're going to be using to defeat these missiles. First thing to say, I'm not going to be doing the flying this time because I'm just not good enough and I just don't know enough about it. Luckily, I have created a group in which we have got extremely enthusiastic and good air-to-air fighters, other guys, so they have essentially done this for me, and I'm just reading out the data, translating it for you guys in a little presentation. We've got 2 methods for each aspect, hot side, and cold. The reason we've got two methods is because we've done the data points, we've done the experiments at angels 25 and angels 0, and you cannot have the same method at 0 as you do to angels 25. It's simply not physically possible. We can really split this up into two. We can say either you're on the deck or you've got altitude. So if you're on the deck, you're on the deck. If you're above kind of 5,000 feet, then you've considered you've got altitude. So we can say that this experiment here, angels 25, will cover all the way down generally to angels 5 or so. So what we'll do is we'll look at each method in detail in TAC view. So as for where each method came from, like I said, it's the combined effort of the various guys in the group who have put these together, with a mixture of being taught them from other groups or working it out from themselves, what they consider through trial and error being the best to use in that particular circumstance. So first of all, each method is either going to be defensive or aggressive. We'll never really have in the middle. A move to dodge a missile, evade a missile, is going to be defensive or aggressive. If possible, you usually, assuming that this is a one-on-one fight and you haven't got friends to come and help you, you're probably going to want to choose the aggressive move if it's possible. So where possible, I've shown an aggressive move here, but quite often, due to physics and parameters, we won't be able to have aggressive. So if it's aggressive possible, we put it in. If not, we've defaulted to defensive. So aggressive means that you're going to recommit after the dodge into the fight again. Defensive means that you have no inclination of recommitting to the fight. You're just going to get out. If you do have a wingman, by the way, then you will never want to go aggressive. You'll always want to go defensive. But that's tactics. We're not into tactics today, so just don't worry about that at all at the moment. So first of all, hot aspect. Co-altitude 25k. The only thing we suggest is the defensive split S. Now, at the end of each move, we have shown how the method that it's beating the missile. It can beat it kinetically, or it can beat it in terms of fooling the radar, or a mixture of fooling the radar and kinetically. The split S, although technically, because we will be chaffing, we'll talk about that in a minute, it will have some effect on the radar. It's basically a kinetic move. You are beating the missile in terms of mechanical energy. We are maneuvering our plane such that the missile will lose speed faster than us, and if anything, we will be gaining speed, and then the missile will be losing speed before it hits us, and we'll be able to get away. The golden rule here is, in every single case, a missile, a rocket, a solid-powered, rocket-motored missile will always work better at higher altitude because it's a non-air-breathing engine, and there is less air resistance up there. Now that's the absolute opposite for an aeroplane. An aeroplane has a jet air-breathing engine, so the higher it goes, the less powerful its engines are, and the less efficient its lifting surfaces are. So, in summary, the golden rule is the missiles always work better at high up, worse at low down. The aeroplane always works worse at high up, better low down. And that's something that we're going to see in all of these moves today. Next golden rule, whenever you are evading these close range missile, you are firing chaff. And I don't mean chaff like ping, ping, ping. I mean ping, 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 ping. 10 chaffs per second is what you need to defeat these missiles. Now, in almost none of these circumstances will the chaff actually defeat the missile on its own. It will just be something that's helping to mask the radar, helping to mask your signature, helping to notch a little bit. It's something you have to do as an aid. And we'll look at that a little closer in the TAC views in a minute. So that's our split S, and we'll look at the actual method in a minute. Deck, the co-altitude on the deck for the hot aspect, we're going to have an aggressive low notch push. This could be a defensive low notch pull as well, but like we said, where we can make it aggressive, we're going to make it aggressive. So I won't explain the technique at this point, but we're going to be glowing low, and we're going to be defeating the missile by something called notching or beaming, which is traveling at exactly 90 degrees to the missile. The way this works is because we can upset a radar in a missile or the radar in a mothership by traveling a beam at 90 degrees to that radar. We can actually fool it. We might not necessarily lose the lock completely, but it may be enough to fool the missile. Well, it is enough to fool the missile. I don't know really how it works. It's a bit beyond my pay grade, so we're not going to get too far into that. So the keywords are low, and the keyword is notch, and push just means that it's aggressive. And this is going to beat the missile by a mixture of kinetic, which is actually a really interesting one when we look at this, and so mechanical energy, and by go on and on. It's not, we don't always beat the missile kinetically by mechanical energy. That one there is beating it by mechanical energy. This one here is actually beating it in this case by exceeding the turn limit of the missile. So if you're going to see the turn limit of the missile, it physically can't turn fast enough to keep up with your aircraft. And that's the one thing about all these missiles here. They're all big, long, because they're medium or long range missiles. They're designed to go a long way. They're not designed to turn tight. So you can upset them in certain moves kinetically based on that. And as we spoke about, to fool the radar, and that's going to be the part of the notching and the beaming. Next is the side aspect. Up at Angels 25, we're going to do a defensive split turnout. So let's break that down. It's going to be a defensive move. So all that means is we're going to end the move facing away from the baddie. We're going to split, which means we're going to be going downwards, down near to plumb, the closest plumb we can get. And turning out means that we're going to be turning away. It's going to defeat the missile kinetically only. Again, we will be working on the radar with chaff, but essentially it's kinetic. Next, on the sea level for side aspect, defensive, so we're going to be pulling away. Low 45-degree snake. This is the only sensible way we can find of beating these missiles at or let on this side aspect. It's going to beat it kinetically purely by mechanical energy bleeding. And this one is also mechanical energy bleeding. Now notice for this one, we haven't done any notching or beaming like we did down here. And that's because notching or beaming is not going to help in this case, because we're already notching and beaming. We're already at side aspect in this shot. And what we found is that just notching or beaming anyway just doesn't help. The missile is already set up itself for a notch beam attack at that point. So this is why we have to do mechanical energy to beat a side aspect shot. Okay, assuming RLET. And finally, to the cold aspect, if it's Angels 25, we're going to do a defensive split notch or beam. So defensive, we're going to be turning away, or certainly not towards the hostile. We're going to be splitting, so we're going to be going down. We're going to be notching, so we're going to be going 90 degrees to the hostile radar. And is a mixture of kinetic, mechanical bleed, and beating the turn, and radar notch beam. And finally, the sea level cold aspect defensive notch beam. So we're going to end up facing not towards the guy, away from the guy, or 90 degrees to the guy. We're going to be using the notch beam, and we're going to be beating the missile, in this case, kinetic, mechanical bleeding, and beating the turn rate and the radar through our flight and our chaff. Okay, so one thing to point out is you notice there's lots of overlaps there, lots of things are overlapping with each other. The beaming overlaps with the chaff overlaps with the kinetic mechanical bleeding overlaps with the beating the turn rate of the missile. So in lots of these cases, although I've said them quite plainly like this, in a lot of cases lots of things are all mixed in there together, but I'm just trying to point out the key points. Okay, so I think I've done enough explaining. Now we're going to go and look at these 6 different moves to defeat these 6 different scenarios. Okay, so we're in TAC view now, and we've got a first example. So this is the head-on, the hot aspect at co-altitude Angels 25. Just in case you haven't seen TAC view before, it is a representation of the data of the actual training that we did in DCS World. So here is the guy who's going to be getting shot at. That's the blue guy, is Joker. Here is shown his true airspeed. Here is ASL, his altitude in feet above sea level. Here is angle of attack. Here is G. Here is turn rate. Just ignore the turn rate for today. And we've got the shooter, exactly the same, true airspeed and whatnot. Anything that's not in here will be in these boxes here, for instance, Mach, and, well, whatever else you find interesting in there. So, as agreed, they're going to be both travelling at Mach 1, or as close as we can get to Mach 1, and Angels 25. The blue guy, the guy who's defending, is at half fuel and about half weapons load to as best simulate the average fight that we can. Let's slow it down, and I'm going to fire it. So to what's going to be happening, this guy is going to be firing at exactly 10 miles as per our chart, as per range lethal at this altitude. And then Joker, as soon as he gets the warning, his RWR warning, I don't tell Joker when I fire the missile. As soon as this guy gets a realistic warning from his RWR, then he's going to invade. He's going to do the defensive split S. He's going to invert. He's going to roll 180 degrees roll, left or right. Well, as soon as he's inverted, it's backstick. And he's going to manage that backstick to manage the angle of attack and the G, and he's going to basically circle all the way down and head so that he's ended up heading back on himself. He's doing that because of all the reasons we said about why it's so important to lose altitude, but also because it's the best way to turn around the jet while maintaining as much speed, mechanical energy in the jet as we possibly can. So we'll set that going. 10 miles. So we're not giving him any prior warning. He is going to get the legitimate RWR warning, so it may take him a while to respond. Okay, he's responding pretty quick. He's inverted. He wants to keep his speed ideally above 600 knots and his G between 7 and 9 G. Ideally, he'd actually be at 9G all the way around, but it's simply not possible. It's incredibly difficult and dangerous to maintain 9G all the way around. So it's a little bit shy on the speed and the G. And if we look at his throttle, you can see he's actually come off the throttle altogether. And I'll stop it there. That's a difference when Joker does his. We spoke after the training session, and when he does the split S's, he comes off the throttle. I don't. I stick to mil power or sometimes full burn. I like to do big 650 knot split S's. I find them more effective. He does slower ones. So we may see this as a bit of a close call, but we'll see. The idea is we want to be losing about almost exactly 10,000 feet in a split S. So it's going to be 25,000 down to 15,000. We're going to manage our alpha to ideally keep it below 20 degrees and our G above 7. All this time, this is forcing the missile down. There's one thing the missile doesn't like to do is to go down. I completely forgot to mention the chaff. Just a mistake by Joker. He should have been chaffing from all the way up here at 10 chaffs per second. So that was just an error there. The missile's probably finished its burn. You can see the burn's finished now and the speed is decreasing on the missile. So it's starting to struggle now. It's getting down lower and lower in thicker air. Okay, so Joker is pretty much bottomed out now. Again, very slow, about 100 knots slower than what I'd like to be doing. He's got to the correct Angels 15. He's managed his alpha fine. His G is perfect. If we look down here, we can see his fuel burn. He is on afterburner now. So we can accelerate up to 700 knots now and just kinetically beat that missile. So if we can get that like that, 1.5 miles. So Joker's doing something here that I, to be honest, wouldn't really advise, and I wouldn't usually do myself. So he's bottomed out now. What I would do is then burners on, and then I always do a 10 to 15 degree dive there and go straight just to keep our acceleration high. And an F-15, for instance, with a relatively light load like this, will get up to kind of 750, 800 knots in that dive, and that's almost impossible for that missile to catch up at that point. What he does instead is he actually turns up, which is a bad idea. I don't know why he does that. And he's doing S's to bleed kinetic energy or mechanical energy off this missile. So that's how he does it. It's not what I like to do because A, it slows us down, so this guy can come and shoot at us, and B, it's just not as good an idea as it's just going faster and outrunning the missile, in my opinion. So it might be a bit of a close shave, but let's see. 4,000 feet. You can see because it's turning, it's putting 5G, even with afterburner on, he's restricted to less than 600 knots. But he could be going 800 by now in a dive. On the plus side, the chaffs are coming out all the time. 2,000 feet, it's down to 700 knots. So he's beat that now. So that's it. That's Joker's variation. I've said my variation all through the moves that we're going to be showing today. There will be personal variations you may want to do, and I'll explain them as we go. Right, what we'll do next is go and look at the next move, which is going to be a hot aspect at low altitude or on the deck. Okay, so we're at the head-on aspect again, but now we're on the deck, so I'm 600 feet, he's 600 feet, we are at Mach 1 exactly, and just under Mach 1 there. Same thing, half fuel, half ordnance. This time I'm an F-15 and the aggressor F-15 throughout, because why not? And he's in a J-11 this time, or we will try this one with an F-15 as well. So in this case, the red guy is going to be firing at 4.7 according to my chart, and the J11 will be turning either left or right in a low notch push. So he's going to be turning as quick as he can, exactly 90 degrees. Then when he's exactly 90 degrees, he's going to level out. He's going to be chaffing throughout all of this. Then once he's decided that he's beaten the missile, he's going to turn 90 degrees into me. He could also make this a defensive move by turning 90 degrees away. So the way this move is going to be beating this missile is by beaming the radar, so confusing the radar with his aspect, but also with the chaff that he's going to be laying, but also by mechanical energy bleed. He's going to force the missile to turn and try and lead in front of him. And also he's going to try and exceed the steering limits of the missile. And as well as that, he's going to do a fifth way of trying to beat the missile, which is keep as low as possible. He's going to try to scrape his wings on the ground. The lower he can get, the better the chance he can beat this missile. And he may even run the missile into the ground in some cases. Missiles have a nasty tendency to try and go below the target for reasons that I don't understand. So there's 5 different methods in this move of him trying to defeat that missile. So let's see it come off the rails. Okay, it's off the rails. You note he starts, again, I don't warn him that it's coming, but he reacts straight away because although it's a Fox 3 type missile, it's gone pitbull as soon as it's off the rails because of the distance involved here. So let's have a look what he's going to do. So let's keep an eye on his vitals. So his bank left, immediate backstick. Going to go up to about, again, 7 to 9 G is optimal. And he's got that absolutely perfect. Trying not to stack up the angle of attack. Trying to keep the speed high, absolutely essential. 7.5 G is perfect. And you see that missile is now having to turn and lead in front of him. Nothing more they hate doing than going down low and having to lead in front of someone. Okay, so it's up to 7G again. It's got his speed high, which is critical. Keeping the speed high keeps this left to right, from this guy's point of view, left to right movement really high. Again, missiles hate that. It means they have to lead in front of them, steer in front of them. And so that missile, oh, look at that. Well, the missile didn't even make it to him. Because he's so low, look how low he is. You know, graphically, his wing is in the water now. He's 47 feet. The centre of his plane is 47 feet from the water. So he's pretty much scraping the water. And that missile just simply couldn't handle it. It, for whatever reasons I'll never understand, it decided to ditch in the water. And what we found out is that even if it didn't ditch in the water, if it carried on attacking him, it probably wouldn't have hit him anyway. It just can't handle this amount of left to right or right to left movement on a fighter, as well as the chaff, as well as the beam, as well as the mechanical energy beam. Everything is just too much for this and all of the other missiles. Okay, we might as well just finish off the move anyway. So in this case, I think it's going to turn it into aggressive move. It's going to try and turn in, or maybe not. No, that's just the end of the move in that case. That's fine. So unlike Joker, I think Tail is using his full power as afterburner here, like he should do, to keep extra fast. So let's go to the next one. It's just straight on. It's just one after another we were doing, and he was beating them every single time. The whole day that we did this with Tail, I didn't manage to kill him once with these super close moves. So let's just line it up. Right, Zach repeat, both at Mach 1, both on the deck. I'm a bit faster this time. I'm I'm exactly at Mach 1. Okay, he's got the warning. It's turning straight away. He's left-handed, I guess, so he's going to go left. Note the chaff. The chaff started 10 per second as soon as he started the move. That's absolute perfection. The missile is having to lead. Missile speed is still going to get quite high, but so check out his altitude. Where is his altitude? Sorry, I've lost it. Oh, there it is. So you notice how he got a little bit higher around there, about 150 feet. So he's putting that right down now, by skill basically, down to 50 feet. So the end of his wing is again scrubbing in the water now. Absolute perfection. And he's not quite got the water. This in the water. It's up at 60 feet this time, but zoom! It just can't handle it. Now, why couldn't that missile hit? I don't think anyone could really tell you why. The closest we can get to a description, I think, is all of the 5 things that we're doing to fool that missile coming in a culmination and leaving the missile unable to hit. It just can't steer, it can't handle the amount of left to right, it can't handle the amount of chaff, it can't handle the degradation in radar from the notch, and so on. And let's just follow that around and see if... Now, out of interest... No. Is it retracking? Yeah, it's retracking, look. So one thing we can say is that it was never completely, never really lost its lock because it's still tracking the guy. In an ideal world, if it had infinite rocket burn, it would now turn all the way around and keep chasing him. So it was enough to fool it, so it couldn't get accurate enough, couldn't get near enough, but we didn't lose the lock completely. And this one, you can see he's turned it into a push. He's turning it in. 7G to go on and try and fight this guy, try and close the distance between them. Now, once they've dodged the missile, we're not really interested any more than that. In the scope of this video, we're just dodging the missile. Whether we push or whether we pull back is going to be in a later tactics video. Right, so that is that. I tell you what, I think it just goes and does it again, so let's check that out. Again, let's get that. Let's get that. 4.6 miles, and the missile's still not out, so even closer than 4.7 miles, as quoted on the graph here. Missile's out at 4.1 miles. Actually, at 4.4, 4.5, I think. Exactly the same thing. He's a bit higher this time by the looks of it. Speed's still above 600. Perfect G, 7.7. And notice how accurately he gets this 90 degrees. That's actually not an easy thing to do. One of the reasons why he's doing this instead of me. Getting 90 degrees when your screen is completely black from G loss is actually really difficult. So he's got the 90 degree beam. He's turning down. And he's nearly 600 knots. And he's done it again. For whatever reason, that combination of things has managed to fool the missile. So it hasn't beaten it ballistically in terms of steering on this example. It can clearly steer enough, but it's the other things. It can't get close enough for the missile to fuse, the fuse to go off. It's beating it, and you can see it's not lost lock. It's reacquiring now, or sorry, it isn't reacquiring. It already had him acquired, and then it just terminated, hit the water, whatever. And so that's another perfect example. How low was he there? So I don't think he was that low. So he was only 150 feet this time, so it still beat the missile. Okay, and we can literally just move straight on now. You can see he turned that into an aggressive move there. Actually, no, I think that he was just messing around. He never would have gone high for an actual real aggressive move. It was just messing around. Ignore that. So, I think we're going to do, yep, we're straight onto another one. It's going to be the same thing, but just showing that we can do it in any aircraft, really. Doing the F-15 this time. Jack of all trades, as we like to call it. Not as manoeuvrable as the flanker, but still, well, faster, if anything. Right, the missile's out at a little bit before that. 4.6. It's out at 4. Where's the distance gone? 4.4, or actually just before. So it shows how quick your reactions have to be, like 100 millisecond reaction. A little bit faster than the flanker. It is just a faster bird. It's accelerated quicker. 7.1 G, pretty much perfect. Missile's gaining speed now. 1500. Tail's actually gaining speed through this turn. G, a little loose on the G, but it's going to do the job, I guess. And a little high. He doesn't fly the F-15, so he's not very used to it. And it's even beating it like that. And that was pretty lax by tail standards. He hadn't, to complete the beam, ideally we want to have the aircraft rolled over to minimise the cross-section presented by to the radar. And he hadn't even really completed his 90 degree. Yeah, he completed his 90 degree, but he hadn't rolled over yet. So that was, and he wasn't very low. So it was a little bit lax, but that shows how, even in range lethal, we can easily beat that. And of course all the chaff and everything else we've been talking about. Just too aggressive for that missile to match at 640 knots a beam. And you can see it's still tracking him. It's going to try and turn around in an ideal world and go and find him again, but obviously it just can't do that. It doesn't have enough rocket motor to do that. Okay, that's it. So that's that. It's just flaring to mess around. Job done. So I think that's the end of the hot aspect. So what we'll do next is go to the side aspect. So I think that's literally the next one that we tried. So let's just go and find him. There they are. Whoops, sorry, I just realised this is the cold. We did the cold before the side. So we're doing cold here, Angels 25. And what he's going to do is he's going to do a split and then a turn. So he's going to do like that split S that we did before, basically. He's going to turn pretty much plumb down, or as near as he can get to that. And he's going to introduce a turn into that, so that when he's pulling out of that split S, he's actually pulling out a beam of the missile. So it's a notch and it's a split. Okay, I'm going to be firing at 7 miles. It's our lethal at this aspect and with these missiles. So I'm going to fire. He's detected the shot right away from the warning. So he's rolled over, inverted, probably over-rolled there. So he's probably going to correct that a bit. No, it's fine. Yep, that's fine. So it's 180 roll. Notice how the chaff started coming out even before backstick. And during this kind of beginning of a split S, he's now changing his roll, rolling right 90 degrees. So when he pulls out, he's going to be notching that missile. And I mean, you'll never get a perfect down plumb here, and then, because he's not a computer, it's a human driving it. It's getting quite close to a plumb though. And again, all the obvious things. Obviously, he's going down for the reasons that we spoke last time. You'd never see anyone up here dodging sidewards or dodging upwards. It's always down if you've got altitude. That's the basic of the basic. Beautiful chaff. And look how much speed he's managed to gain in the flanker here. Really, look at that, the steering that AIM-120C has got to do to get in front of him, because tail is just going so fast. A beam. Really going to struggle. Imagine the radar in that AIM-120C there. The radar is actually poking out, kind of in an angle like that, trying to track him. It's very difficult for this missile to do this. And it's probably dead already. In fact, it is. It's dead already. And it's very possibly the reason why it died is because it was forced at such an off angle that it could no longer even remember this is a Fox 3, it's its own onboard radar. It just couldn't continue tracking him anymore, and that may be the reason for it dying. I don't really know. I guess we'll never know. We're not missile experts by any means, but you can see the kind of perfection in that. Basically, he's started off the split S. He's rolled out. As because its tail, he's perfectly 90 degrees of beam, as you can see. Like I said, really hard to do. And he's also not come out and level. He's got that slow incline. Like when we were looking at the split S at the very beginning, Joker kind of came down and then went up on mil power for some reason. I'll never understand why. But when I come down from one of these split S's, I do this, keep down about 10 to 15 degrees to make sure you can keep accelerating with burners all the way up to 900 knots if necessary. Really struggles for a missile to catch you up in those cases. Okay, and let's beat him. So many different reasons we beat that. It was scrubbing the mechanical energy off of the missile by forcing it to turn. We put it out of its gimbal limit to its center. I think maybe, I'm not entirely sure, possibly out of its steering limits. Confusing the radar with the chaff, confusing the radar with the beam, confusing just its whole ability with the massive left to right movement of nearly 800 knots. So really hard for a missile. That's it. Don't want to go any further. We've dodged the missile. Next we're going to be doing another cold aspect, if we can find it. There we are. There goes the missiles. So we're on cold aspect, we're now on the deck, and if I look at my things I can see it's 3.5 miles is the V-lethal. We're exactly 3.5 miles. We're firing the missile. We're both at Mach 1. Or he is at least. No, he's well below. So he's actually made this a lot harder for himself by going slower. So that's a bit of an error on his behalf. He should have been at Mach 1 for the test, but that puts it against him. Same as usual, half fuel and half weapon load. Let's fire the missile. It's reacted immediately. Sorry, we haven't talked about what we're actually going to do here. It's basically the same as what we just did up there, but we can't dive. So the best we can do is stay level as low as possible again and notch that sucker. As much left to right to left movement as possible, many chaff as we can do, and get a beam 90 degrees as fast as we can. So that missile's got all the things working against it. Lovely G, nearly 8G there, bang on the money. Lovely 90 degrees. He lost a lot of speed, but that's because he only started at Mach 0.86, so he made this one a lot harder than it needed to be. Now it's key to get the wings level here, I find. Yeah, and that missile's really going to struggle now. It's having to aim miles in front of him. And ballistically it looks okay, and speed-wise it looks okay, but the reality is it's not tracking him. Reasons I'm not sure. Maybe again it's lost him out of its the ability to track and the sensor gimbal limit or whatever. Either way, that is a missile defeated. So exactly the same, except for we're staying on the ground. Obviously, obvious things. We're never going to go up. Dodging missiles 101. We're never ever going to go up. We're always going to stay level. Or if we're always going to go down, and if we can't go down, we're always going to go level. He's climbing here just to mess around. He's not actually climbing. It's not part of the maneuver. Okay, so let's scoot on to our next one. Slide forward. Try and find the boys. Here we go. So this is going to be side-on shot at Angels 25. So it's going to be firing at 8 miles. So it's not quite 90 degrees beam like I was supposed to. It turns out it was actually quite hard to get the shot or tell exactly what angle he was at. It was about 80 degrees or something instead. So what we're going to see from this case, from the Angels 25, the side-on attack at 8 miles, is because he's already beaming the missile, then there's no point of trying to beam the missile even more. So what he's going to do is to do a split down to the plumb, or near down to the plumb, and then as he comes down, he's going to roll so that when he pulls aft stick, then he's going to be moving away from us here. And then he may or may not go into S's depending on how the missile has done. He's in the J11 again, so let's see it through. Let me just get a better angle. It's fired, it's responded immediately, turned left, rolled over, chaff out straight away, all the way down to the plumb or thereabouts, 600 knots. At this point the missiles are having to kind of aim roughly at that angle there to lead in front of us. As we said before, there's one thing missiles hate doing, it's going down low. So 650 knots for tail. Now he's pretty much in the plum. Now he's going to turn right 90 degrees and head away from the missile. The missile has now burnt all of its rocket motor by the looks of it. It's now slowing down. Tail is speeding up, 700 plus knots now. It's going to slowly start levelling out. He's not done many G on this pull. It's only been up to about 6G. Oh, the missile's beaten. No, the missile's not beaten yet. It's still leading him. So it's now just a case of bleeding the mechanical energy of this missile. And the missile is down to 1500 knots. Tail is up to 800 knots. So this plane is getting stronger. The lower down it gets, the missile is getting weaker. 4,000 feet. Over 800 knots now. Down to 1200 knots. 1100 knots. Soon these speeds are going to merge. 1000 feet. 900 knots. 850 knots. And that's it. It's beaten. Did a little turn away at the end. I don't think he really needed to. He probably could have just kept going on straight. But there's no harm doing a turn. It's going to bleed the energy a bit more. So that was purely bleeding the mechanical energy of the missile down. The missile never really got fooled in terms of radar by the looks of things. And it's not put him in such a bad position at the end of that either, because I've burned all the way to try and catch up with him as if I were going to fire a missile, secondary missile, and I'm still only 6 miles away from him. And because he's low, the R lethal is now a lot smaller. So pretty good move all round. So that's that move, which takes us on to our final one. I'm just going to move forward a bit. Okay, so this is the side-on attack at sea level. From memory, I think we had to have a couple of little goes at this, so let's see. First attack is that. Again, it's not quite 90 degrees, it's more like 80 degrees. That's the best we could get without being able to actually see. Right, and the missile firing range, according to the graphs, is 4.1 miles, so I'm just a little lower than that. I'm 3.8 here. And what we're going to see this time is something a little bit different. This is because we're already beaming, so there's no point of beaming anymore. We can't defeat the missile anymore in that way, so it's going to be purely bleeding the mechanical energy away from the missile. So all we're going to do is a turn and away from the missile, and then we're going to go into S's, 45 degree S's, left and right and left and right, left and right, full power, keeping as much speed on as we can, rationing the alpha, and we're going to burn the energy away from the missile, that way forcing it to turn and keep low. As we know, the two worst things for a missile are keeping low and turning. So he's got the warning, it's turning, the chaffs are coming out. Burners on, maintaining over 600 knots, 7.5 G, turning away from the missile. Keeping the alpha pretty low still. Speed is good. So it's now cold away from the missile. That's not going to be enough. We're going to have to do some more work to bleed this missile because it is only, whatever it is, 1.7 miles. So we're now reversing right, and the amount we turn, the missile is always going to have to turn a bit more because it has to aim in front of where we're going. So it's now leading us there, and you can see how much the speed is now degrading from the missile. Now tail will track left and make it turn left. All the time monitoring his alpha and keeping his speed as high as possible, and the G is going to be 7 to 9 ideally. So it's the left pull now, and he's already got it down to 800 knots. There we go, 7.5 G, it's perfect. And that missile there never stood a chance at 3.8 miles, I think that was. So that's that. Now I think we go and just do it again, so let's go forward. There we go, a bit different this time. I'm up a bit higher. It's going to make it worse if anything. So this one's going to be at 4.1 miles, bang on. And about 75 degrees this time. Immediately is going to detect which way this missile is coming from his RWR, turn the opposite way, keep his speed high, monitor his alpha, G between 7 and 9. And exactly the same thing, speed it up this time. Seven and a half G. Missile speed, because it's having to shuffle left and right and be low down. It's struggling now. 7.5 G, over 600 knots. It's in a flanker, but it could be in any of the fast fighter aircraft to do this. And that's it. It's down to 640 knots and it's beaten, and he can go on and do whatever he wants to do next. So that shows the recommended evasion method from sea level and from altitude of the missiles being fired at, are lethal, are a no escape, and the things we can do and the ways that we can fool that missile. And just so you don't think that we did this hundreds of times and only picked the ones that worked. Tail, for this whole evening, Tail didn't get shot down once from firing from these R-lethals, and Joker was only shot down once or maybe two in all of his goes. So it is incredibly effective as long as your timing is right, as long as your G-forces are right, as long as your speed is right, as long as everything's right, then it's almost 100% success rate every time. So today we just looked at the actual evasion. What we'll do next is look at the evasion, but then the follow-up, the actual tactics, and that's going to depend on a lot more parameters. So we'll leave that to later. Other than that, I hope that helps and see you later.